Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today and taking the time out of what I'm sure is your busy days for this prompt engineering webinar with us at mytender.io. And yeah, we started a couple minutes, left you guys a few minutes to join us and get ready for the workshop. But yeah, big thank you for taking the time out. And it's great to see over 100 businesses sign on to be a part of the session, joining from all over the world. And before we get started into the workshop, we do have a couple of stats to share with you to affirm why it has been a great decision to join us for today. So in a recent Deloitte study in 2025, they reported that now 52% of businesses in the UK are using AI on a weekly basis. So that means if you're not using AI on a weekly basis, then your competitors are. And of those 52% of businesses using AI on a weekly basis here in the UK, 93% of them have reported an increase in top line revenue since the adoption of AI. So that leads us perfectly onto the session today. With AI creating profound opportunities right now, this webinar will show you how to harness some of its powers for your business's bid writing. The webinar is hosted by our team here at mytender.io, including myself, Samuel Aaron, having worked in AI for over 4 years and been involved in multi-billion-pound public sector AI projects, and have recently been awarded the best research paper in program from the University of Southampton for my academic paper, The Impact of AI on SMEs Tender Success in the UK. I'm also joined by Jamie Horsnell, our CTO and Head of Product, responsible for linguistic engineering at mytender.io, having spent over 3,000 hours prompt engineering over the last 2 years and working as an ambassador for the Centre for Gen AI Ops, where he's developing manifestos for the use case of Gen AI here in the UK, alongside the National Technology Officer at Microsoft, where Jamie recently presented his manifesto at the House of Lords. I'm sure he doesn't mind me telling you guys that. We're also joined by Caitlin Payne, who's a new addition to our team at MyTender. She's a seasoned technical saleswoman and is responsible for finding and closing new business as we're growing our company. Today, Caitlin sat in the Teams chat and will be filtering out your guys' questions. So feel free to pop questions in the chat as we go. And yeah, Caitlin will filter them out for the Q&A at the end and respond to some short ones as we go. So really quick breakdown of the agenda before we get into things. First of all, we'll take a quick pit stop tour around prompt engineering, a bit about what it is, why it matters, and contextually how it changes. We'll then look at some worked examples with like basic language models, professional bid writing systems like ours, and then sort of demonstrate the prompts in action. And we'll finally get to a summary, Q&A, and how you can access our white paper that will detail all of this. So without further ado, I'll hand over to our head of product and prompt engineering specialist, Jamie.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sam. And yeah, thank you everyone for taking the time. So what actually is prompt engineering? It's got a couple of different terms: prompt engineering, linguistic engineering, context engineering, but essentially it means the same thing, and that is the process where you guide generative AI solutions to generate your desired outputs. So I like to sort of break it down into a formula, which is of 2 parts, which determine essentially the quality of your prompts or the prompt accuracy, which I essentially define as how close it is to your desired output. So firstly, the quality of the context. This is sort of why it's called context engineering, and the way that language models work by predicting the sort of next word. It sort of differs from human intelligence. It works from the vast amount of data it's read and predicting statistically the next word that is going to come up. So in that instance, the change of context changes the potential meanings of the word. For example, if you were to say, breaking a vase, or break from work, or breaking news, it's the same words, but they've all got quite different meanings. So in a bid writing context, the key context which I would be using within your prompts is essentially the company information. Now, this is super important so that you actually, the AI has something to go off, it understands your business. The more information you can feed it on a more sort of top line level of general context of what your business does, and then also more on a granular level on the sort of when you are coming to respond to those highly technical questions, the more context that has that to understand the business, then the better. There's also the tender information or information on the customer. Obviously, tenders are all about answering and sort of understanding what the customer is wanting in a solution, and how to respond to what they are putting out as questions. So it's super important to have an understanding of why they released that tender, their pain points, and to include those within your prompts for the optimal responses. And then finally, some more sort of for enhancing the specific quality of your responses, things like win themes, tone of voice, which you want to respond in, the unique selling points of your business, all of these different contexts which you can feed into your prompts at different stages, as I can sort of go on to an example later. These are all going to make sure that the AI has got the perfect context to generate super high quality responses, and the quality of these contexts also is going to impact. So if you have extremely well-defined win themes that you spent a bit of time on and thrown into the prompt, then that's going to be better than just essentially having like very generic standardized win themes or no win themes at all, for example. And then onto the other side of it, the quality of the instructions. So that's the actual instructions you're giving to the language model around the context and the instructions you're giving to what you want as an output. So some key techniques for this is role definition. All of my important prompts that I do on a day-to-day basis, I will definitely give it a role. So in like a bid writing context, it's like you are a professional bid writer of 20 plus years experience writing for company My Tender, for example. That basically just helps frame the model in terms of knowing what perspective to respond from. And it's, there's studies which show it's definitely improves the quality of responses. Chain of reasoning, one sort of the downsides of AI, or where it actually lacks the intelligence, is sort of understanding how to get from A to B and the actual reasoning and thinking behind it. Because as I said sort of before, it doesn't think as the same way as a human. So if you can essentially within that prompt break down the steps to get to that final output, then it's basically going to make it much more easy, reduce the cognitive load for the sort of language model, and help get to the output much more effectively. And then lastly, input integration. Hypothetically, if you were to chuck all of these contexts into a bid response, which is quite a lot all at once, then that's a lot of information essentially for it to handle. Whereas if you do it sort of interoperately through a series of 2 to 3 to 4 prompts, then you can essentially make sure that each time you are adding an input into a prompt, it's going to be much more accurate at adding in that input and contributing to the final output. So here's a quick example of one, just like an early sort of stage prompt for a bid response. So it's got the role in there, as I sort of stated before. It's got a question near the top, so I've marked it. If you do want to sort of highlight specific things, you can do hashtag, which basically sort of focuses language models. And also anytime you are adding context in specifically, then it's good to either put some speech marks around it. That's just a little sort of small tip, basically help the language model know when the start and end of an input is. And then I've also got some contextual input, so things like compliance requirements, win themes, pain points, etc., which you could use in the first one and then continue to feed through into later prompts. And then also the chain of thought instructions. So I've sort of broken it down. Firstly, look at the question. Secondly, use the writing plan, which potentially has been generated above. And then I'm sort of instructing the language model for how to use it at each different stage. Now, that's the sort of prompting side of things. The other is choosing what actual model you want to use. Now, I'm sure everyone here is predominantly a ChatGPT user. They've released GPT-5 today, which will be interesting to test out a bit more. But some of the strengths and other models which you can test out and try, I suppose, like humans, they have advantages, well, strengths and weaknesses. The Gemini, very good for large amounts of context, things like analyzing the tender information. ChatGPT, very good all-rounder, good writing quality, probably one of the most generally high quality, like intelligent models. My personal favorite of Claude, I like it because of the way that it breaks down sort of problems and the sort of analytical side to it. So very strong for, when you're looking to review your bids or understand potentially, or come up with new technical specifications for your customer. And then Perplexity, the best for research. So that's research on the customer, on the competitive landscape, and also technical information as well. And then Lightendo.io, what essentially we do is we analyze not just these four models, but a wider range and integrate them into our system for where they are best suited and where their strengths lie, so that basically across the wide bid process, you're sort of getting the best model for each use case. Onto the use cases, basically you can, some of the key areas which you can use AI across the bidding process. Firstly, the bid, no bid decision. So before you've even decided you want to bid on a contract, you can use, for example, Perplexity to understand the competitive landscape, as well as, let's say, just running your thoughts and some analytics. You can sort of give the AI all of the context and information for why potentially you should or shouldn't bid, and just sort of go back and forth with the model to sort of help you analyze and decide whether it's a good decision. Something which I do for most of my important life decisions. And then there's also the deep research feature. Well, when you're doing research on a customer, for example, or on the competitive landscape, using deep research is, once you've decided that you're going to bid on a contract and getting that information, that's a very good use case for it. The most obvious, which I think we all probably jumped to when ChatGPT first got released, is the actual writing side of things and the content creation. Once again, just very easy to iterate over multiple and get that first draft on the paper and sort of help that sort of blank mind and just basically starting off. And then lastly, analysis. That's one of the sort of AI strong points, in my opinion, is doing a detailed analysis and evaluation. So for example, you could feed that evaluation criteria back in once you've got the response, ask it to score it, and then basically iterate from there and keep doing that in a sort of cyclical process. So pass it back over to Sam to show where some of those techniques we've used are sort of within our system, and sort of how we sort of use those prompt engineering techniques we've sort of learned over the span of over the last 2 years.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jamie. Like, some incredibly insightful details on how to engineer prompts to really get the most out of the language models for your writing. And what we would love to show you guys now is essentially some of those principles and philosophies in action on our system, in a quite sophisticated and fine-tuned manner, where these has been iterated over time with workflows and some of our customers, essentially how we can get the most out of language models to improve your bid writing. So for context, this system does have like essentially a bid library already set up in it, which is working in the background. So this would either be like manually set up, so just dragging and dropping your bid library in here, or can be integrated into like a pre-existing data source and or bid library, wherever that's kept. So this is all running in the background and is sort of necessary to the setup of an account. But for the prompting side of things, to show you guys the real value and where it can really add value to your bid writing process, is going to be zooming in to this part of the system. So once you've uploaded a new tender, you upload the documents, put in some basic preliminary details, it will show up in your dashboard like this. So for this worked example, essentially it's like a major building works, Camden Council tender. So this has got like all of the documents in, like award criteria, ITT, etc. And then the first part, so Jamie mentioned about the contextual loading of the systems, and like this is just how granular and low level we get with the context that we're feeding into our system and our language model to write essentially bid responses. So once we've uploaded this ITT and evaluation criteria into the system for this specific tender, we'll then perform, and this takes literally a few seconds, so it saves hours and hours of time as well. But like we'll extract the key project details, the scope of work, the delivery and environment, the core strategic objectives of the client that you're bidding for. We'll then like extract the mark criteria and break that down into quite granular components again. So this includes like the financial criteria, the social value, the quality management, your team, etc. We'll then analyze specific language and positioning, so the way words have been written in the documents, emphasis on certain areas. We can then extract that information, analyze that, and we'll feed this all in as context. So we're even analyzing between the lines and feeding that in as context too. So that's just the summary tab. We then also perform analysis, for example, on like the specific win themes. So we're like reading the tender documents, we're extracting specific quotes, we're analyzing them, and then we're building up like basically our win themes for this specific tender. So here you can see like an example of these win themes being built up. And again, this is all loaded into our system as context. We'll do a similar thing with the pain points. Here you can see the sections that are extracted from the inferences. Again, just to build up those pain points, to help like build that narrative and those helping us resonate with our tender. So essentially we can create that sort of intangible value and resonation really. We'll also do like, this is a little bit different, but this is like an external analysis. So like you can input your competitors, or we can analyze based on the contract's parameters who would be a likely bidder. We'll then go and do like an external analysis. So we'll grab publicly available data, we'll build a differentiation strategy, and again, weave that into our writing. And then finally, there'll be a compliance table. So we'll extract all of the compliance requirements. And this is more so just to like ensure these are woven into every single response, like set up so that the bids are always compliant. So it's a core element that needs to be included within the sort of systems intelligence, if you like. And then, yeah, there's additional functionality to extract more information and provide that to your bid writers. It's something slightly different to like the actual prompting side of the software. So the next step, once we've extracted all this information and like, saved a significant amount of time in doing so, but as well as like extracted all of this fantastic context for our system, we then put that into areas where it can be enriched by the bid writer. So essentially the solution design, for example, here's what we've extracted and we believe is like a good sort of macro solution for that specific contract. So instead of like going to subject matter experts for this information, essentially we can leverage previous technical information and build up that solution. And then the bid writer can essentially, you as a bid writer can like read through this, and you can use that sort of chain of reasoning element that Jamie touched upon. So in here you can read this, but like there may be sort of like you're reading this operational section and you might want to like add in more economic. So you can then like, you have the initial answer, but you want to like add in more economic value to this operational section as like you know, from your tacit knowledge, you feel that's what the system needs. You can pop in your prompts and then you can iterate on top of them to like very, very quickly sort of dump in your knowledge and your skill sets to like enrich the prompts even further. So here's going to like take my advice and it's going to go and rewrite that specific section. And then you may want to like go and do like 3, 4, 5 iterations. So here's what it's done. But I may want to like add in a case study to like 0.6 and emphasize that. So essentially you can go through and then you can do the same with your win themes, the same with the customer's pain points, and the same with your differentiation strategy. So you can go through in like a storyboard-esque way of iterating, chaining your prompts together and building a really powerful set of inputs that will be attached to relevant sections of your response. So that's mainly the prompting side. I'll quickly run you through so you know what the system would look like in terms of the output. So you'd have an outline. All the questions are extracted from the ITT and put into a table here. You can tap into each section where you have like a plan for the question. You'll see the word count that's been extracted, the compliance requirements relevant to that question. And then this will be the same for each specific question that's been extracted. And then you can just go ahead and generate all of your answers, where we'll go to your company library, find relevant information. We'll go to the tender documents, retrieve the relevant parts from our analysis and the inputs that we've created in that sort of prompting phase. And then we'll also be able to like extract additional information if required and if configured by the bid writer to go online and extract additional sources on like your client, for example. So here's like the reference from the library where it's from, and like essentially the answer that we can generate in a fraction of the time that it would take to sort of start from scratch. But yeah, this, you know, starts you significantly further down the line in a more advanced position, and this gives you a good taste of what, like, I guess a professional system would look like. So I think, Caitlin, have you gathered any questions or?
I think between Nicholas and Jamie, you guys have answered most of the questions in the chat already.
Yeah, I think a couple good points which I've seen. So some things around Copilot. Yeah, it's a good point. We probably should have added in Copilot as a comparison. Joanna, so thank you for that. Our sort of what we've heard from people who have used Copilot in a bid writing sense is that whereas yes, it does definitely provide the security of your data like we do. However, because of the fact that it is general purpose, it's for essentially like a very wide range of business functions and operations. It doesn't necessarily have that specific quality to understand how to integrate back to sort of the things I was speaking about in the prompt engineering side, like curation of those high quality bidding inputs that essentially lead to the high quality output at the other side of it. It doesn't necessarily have that capability or engineering behind it, as well as also as like, you know, sort of we develop in the sort of AI phase. And one thing, as Sam briefly touched on, is like the agents which we have, which is essentially each one with specialized bidding thinking, basically. And these are sort of the elements which, as we, you know, and companies like us continue to develop and get highly more specialized as the sort of technology improves, then this is where Copilot will likely sort of fall behind. But it's definitely a great point. So thanks for bringing that up. And then
I'll really quickly add to that, cautious of timings. But like those agents, for example, are a great point that you mentioned. So like, for example, if you want to edit sections within here, and this takes away specifically within prompting, like this takes a lot of weight off the bid writer's shoulders. So, you know, you can just I could just put in here for this paragraph, like to add in more technical and then basically the agents in the system understand that that data needs to be got from the internal library, because it's obviously your internal technical information, and then I can insert that answer there. So these means your prompting can be a bit more note form and like a little bit less sort of having to set it up. Whereas because these agents understand, okay, I need to go to the internet for that, I need to go to the tender, I need to go to my library. So yeah, that's one of the upsides of using like an agentic system.
And just quickly to run through some more questions. So I've got a question from Romeo about, can we, in information processing, read and extract data from drawings? So yeah, we basically have, when you do upload things to our pictures, to our content library, then it essentially breaks down, like understands that image, passes that image correctly, so that it has that context to be used at the other side. And then we're also adding in a feature fairly soon where we'll actually automatically integrate that back into your bid response. Another question from Karen around security credentials and sort of where the data is stored. So it's all stored on in AWS London, so sort of local to sort of where we are, and we are ISO 27001 certified, with like lots of 99.99% uptime and lots of extra security sort of measures which we take and had to do to get the ISO certification. But yes, we offer all of those backup and recovery as well, Karen. But thanks for your question.
Melissa's question quickly. Yeah, like the tagging's all done automatically by our system in the background. So when you upload information, that's all what we'd call parsed, but essentially sectioned or tagged into semantically similar data sets, which is all done in the background. So you just put the information, the PDFs in on the front end, and that's all done in the background.
Another question from Anya around, is the current internet information up to date or is a lag time? We use models which are pulling in the latest information, so it's all completely up to date. And then I also saw a question, I think a little bit further in terms of like, where do you know around only predominantly trusting information from the content library, and how do you know where it's pulling from? So we basically have, it sources all of the information which it's pulling from, and you can also sort of select and turn on and off where you want it to be. For the core responses themselves, that is predominantly only pulling from your content library and information from the tender. So there's no internet information included in the core generation. That would be added in the sort of like IO AI agent. But I hope that sort of covers the sort of internet questions, but very, very great question. And scrolling up, is there any that we've missed, Caitlin?
Yeah, Karen, sorry, asked your question twice. Yeah, so what essentially we were using as the base metric for whether a language model can be seen as secure or not secure. Also as well, but we've gone over the allocated slot. Like, we're very big on finishing on time. So if you want to leave, like, feel free to drop off. Like, we'll stay on for a couple minutes as long as Caitlin, Jamie, you guys don't mind. Yeah, there's a link if you need to go, you can book in a demo. We'll be happy to speak with you. Just spare some time to speak with you guys. If you do have a little bit of time, feel free to stay on. I'll answer a couple more questions. So yeah, Karen, in regards to what metrics we used for security, essentially that's if it's like an open source model where it's like a foundational model where those language models are built upon training on data that's used within them. And like essentially the way that they improve, like for example, GPT-5's come out, all that is essentially more data has been added to that model and essentially enhances its capabilities. Whereas a system like that we would define as like essentially secure is where it's not a foundational model. You're not using more data to improve the system. The technical advancements that come from essentially like things like prompting, as well as like workflows, lots of different technical methodologies, but the core metric is like whether it's used data to train the model or whether it's not trained on data. Would be
So
my
there's a couple comments I think I've seen around the use of AI within bids and if it's permitted or not by, you know, authorities. I believe the latest public procurement notice stated that it is, you know, you have to disclaim whether it's been used or not within the bid writing process, but that's not to be discriminated at all against. My personal opinion is that authorities authorities essentially, like, what they don't want is poor quality AI. They don't want someone who's just generated a generic ChatGPT response without any editing or company information in it that essentially just doesn't sort of deliver any real value or answer their questions. What they do want to see is sort of, you know, if AI is being used to further explain the capabilities of that business and what they can offer in a more coherent way, then I think that's something which they do not discriminate at all against. And furthermore, it's an extremely tough thing to, you know, it's like saying, have you used a calculator back in sort of when calculators came out. It's you can use AI at sort of multiple different, you could use it to generate ideas for your bid. It's sort of extremely impossible to you know, sort of safeguard against AI, and the realistic future is that it's going to be in sort of everything we do over the coming 5-10 years. So I think that I wouldn't worry about using it within your bids or the sort of authorities.
Yeah, and it aligns like exactly with what the government and the country are moving in the artificial intelligence direction, with, you know, the UK central government recently signing a $2 billion deal directly with OpenAI to integrate AI technologies into defense, into education, justice, across the whole public sector services. There's a huge shift as a country to integrate more artificial intelligence to increase efficiency, increase the ultimate quality and performance of different services. So it would not make sense for them to then go and penalize, you know, their suppliers, their bidders for using AI, when that's the, you know, one of the core objectives as the country, as we push on to be, you know, one of the global leaders in artificial intelligence.
Another question come through, does it integrate with Google Drive? Yeah, it pretty much, we've got a new feature which integration, which essentially allows you to integrate with Google Drive, as well as also SharePoint. So it's super easy and onboarding doesn't take much time at all. Cool. So I think that's pretty much, you know, unless anyone has any additional questions, I think that's good time to wrap up. Sorry for finishing a little bit over. But yeah, thank you very much for your time and joining, everyone. I hope that you have found some value in understanding a little bit more about prompt engineering, ways that you can improve it in your daily life, not just bid writing, understanding how AI works, how these language operate, so that you can start, you know, using it much more effectively, saving you much more efficiently, and also becoming much more valuable, I suppose, to you know, your business as well as you personally. So yeah, thank you very much for your time, everyone. If you do have any sort of comments or want to reach out and have more more information about my Tender.io or sort of how it could work in your business, please do let us know. And yeah, thanks for your time, everyone.
Cool. Thank you very much, guys. And I've left a link if you want to, or you can find it on our website if you want to speak with any of us at the team, Jamie, Caitlin, Nicholas. Come have a chat with us. Happy to support with any queries. But yeah,
thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.